Is there a new number one receiver in Green Bay? Which sleeper tight end in the NFC East should you look long and hard at before you submit your lineups for week 4? And which sleeper quarterback is actually a better start than Joe Burrow coming up this weekend in the FFPC? Plus, the 7th place team in the FFPC main event. Jeff Hallas is going to drop by to talk about how he constructed his team, his toughest lineup decision that's facing him this weekend, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome in and thank you to Rob. Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and for LEX tuning in into the episode tonight. Welcome to the latest show of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, which as always is presented to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. I'll bring in my co-host shortly here. As a reminder, if you guys are looking for weekly action, look no further than myffpc.com. myffpc.com. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge right now. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose 10 players if you want to play without kickers and defenses, or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses by Sunday's kickoff and just watch them ride through the weekend's games. Remember, you can only pick one player per team, just like we do in the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. You can enter for $200. You can enter for $35 as well, and you can win up to $2,500. That's at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Sign up today, register now, and have a lot of fun in week 4. Add on, add supplement. These are the enhancements. When you go to a steakhouse, you know, they always have the enhancements listed on the menu. The weekly challenge is the enhancement for the FFPC for all your season-long games. Get that blue cheese crust. Get the peppercorn crust, whatever you want. Get it Oscar style. We have a plethora of options to choose from the weekly challenge. My mouth is starting to water. I skipped dinner tonight, so there might be more than a few food references on tonight's show. Remember, maybe you won't want to do this now, but remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends and enemies, and get notified every time we go live here on the FFPC YouTube channel. Let's bring him in right now, ladies and gentlemen. He is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. You should be checking out the KFFSC.com. KFFSC, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. The incomparable, the one, the only, Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, welcome in. Happy last show of September. And the next time we go live, my friend, it'll be October already.
That was some brilliantly thought out and planned and adjective-laden introduction. Thank you, Balky.
You're welcome.
Man, it is football crazy. We have University of Louisville tonight on ESPN. We have the Canadian Football League playing on my telephone, but there's nothing I would rather do than talk to you, Balky, about football. Because that's where the real stuff is.
Yes, and it's short. Like we can't, like a Louisville football game lasts 3.5 hours, right? Canadian football, 4 hours. 4 hours.
Wait for halftime, and I thought Usher was, doing a halftime show or something. Why is it so? Why do they have 30-minute halftimes? I don't understand.
I don't think Usher. I think Usher's just going to get warmed up for Las Vegas coming up.
Got a pretty good gig there.
February. Yes, he does. I can't remember who I was discussing this with, but somebody's like, the NFL is going to find a way to make Taylor Swift like some sort of special guest appearance for the Super Bowl halftime show this year. And I said she can't do that because she would upstage Usher. She's like the biggest star in the world right now. And I didn't want to have to talk about her, but because we have a fantasy football podcast, we are contractually obligated to mention Taylor Swift at least once. I've done it twice now, so we're done with our live reads.
Well, we are actively recruiting Swifties to play in Kentucky next year, and Swifties come in all ages, and that's what you got to love about them. And they're equally passionate to our fantasy players, so I think there's a lot of commonalities there.
Yeah, I noticed that when Taylor Swift was at the Chiefs game, I think Travis Kelce's picked up like 200-some thousand followers on the X. So clearly there is a crossover between Swifties and fantasy football. And I invite all those Swifties to check out KFFSC.com. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to discuss whether Tank Dell is a must start this week, whether you need to look at getting an AFC South stud out of your lineup, maybe more than one. We'll get into that coming up. And then Jeff Hallas, the leader in the FFPC main event after week 2. He is now in 7th place in the main event heading into week 4. He's going to join us. We're going to wrap with him about his surprising quarterback start this week. Maybe not so surprising. Whether Gerald Everett has legs this week without Mike Williams and much more. That is all coming up on the program tonight. Jahmyr Gibbs, Ferrell. Let's talk about Thursday night's debacle for the Green Bay Packers. But I want to focus this on Jahmyr Gibbs because he was drafted so highly by so many FFPC players this year. Pretty much a 3rd-round pick. I saw him go in the 2nd round, end of the 2nd round in a few drafts. 8 rushes for 40 yards last night. He had 4 catches for 11 yards on 5 targets. He touched the ball 18 times the previous week against Atlanta, and that was without David Montgomery. Montgomery was back this game. Montgomery, who was questionable with a thigh injury, set a career high in carries with 32 last night. I think it's pretty clear, whether we like it or not, we need to roll with the punches here with Dan Campbell trusting David Montgomery, wanting to utilize David Montgomery. And Jahmyr Gibbs is simply a change of pace, maybe a 3rd down guy at this point. Maybe he's just a flex, which stinks for anybody who invested into Gibbs. Hi, hello, I'm the problem. It's me. Last Taylor Swift reference of the night, I promise you. Actually, I'm not going to promise that. It could happen again. But here's the thing. Like, I think as painful as it is, do we need to start looking at potentially benching Jahmyr Gibbs going forward because of what we saw on Thursday night? Or was this just simply a domination of the Detroit offensive line and David Montgomery, a one-off, if you will, and Gibbs still has to be started every single week?
Absolutely. You start Gibbs every single week. What happened in this game? The game was too easy for Detroit. What was it, Balky? 24-3. I know you don't want to relive it.
27-3.
27-3. So you got a situation that you're playing Thursday football. So what happens when you're playing Thursday football? You are not you're not dealing with the whole install. All the coaches that have their meetings and their ideas of what they want to do, that's put off to the following week. You're on a short week. So you get in the game and something's working with a rested player who says, hey, coach, I'm feeling good and I'm feeling loose. And that pass rush was getting after the quarterback early. And you remember the quarterback made some bad decisions early, so, yeah, everything that was working was the right call. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what Detroit did for the game. They will not resist moving Gibbs back to greater touches. And, Gibbs may have a game that looks much like what we saw for the other running back. So, keep your Gibbs in there. You're going to be fine.
Could be a big-time get-right game in week 5 for Jahmyr Gibbs as they host the 0-3 Carolina Panthers at 1 p.m. next week. So, yeah, keep the faith with Gibbs. Hopefully, like, you're hit with buys and injuries, you're forced to start him less. That's what I always like, Ferrell, is like when I'm thinking about benching one of my studs, I'm like, God, I wish I had some injuries or bye week issues where I don't even have the choice to bench him. That could be the case next week with 4 teams on bye. More to come on next week's.
I would accuse you of being overthinking if you started thinking about benching Gibbs. The reason you drafted Gibbs is because you love the athlete, and that athlete's going to get to show his thing during the season.
I feel like we have this every year where somebody drafts a player high, a team drafts a player high in the NFL draft, and then after a couple of weeks of non or misusage, we start complaining. Why would they even draft this guy if this is how they're going to use him? And usually, by and large, by the end of the season, they end up working that guy in. It's pockets, it's windows. This guy is not going to be rode hard every single week and expected to carry a heavy load every single week. Look at what Detroit did last night. It was working with Montgomery, 120-some yards, 3 touchdowns. Packers defense could not hold a candle to him. There was no reason to deploy Gibbs, right? So keep the faith on Gibbs. I think next week could be a big game for him. I'll tell you who had a big game last night as well. Romeo Doubs, 13 targets. He catches 9 of them for 95 yards. And this is with Christian Watson out there. Now, We know both Watson and Aaron Jones were on snap counts last night. Watson played, I think, less than half the offensive snaps. I'd have to double check on that, but it was close if it wasn't. But Dobbs, this was a career night for him. Personal best in both targets and yards. Almost had a touchdown late in the fourth quarter, but there was a miscommunication there when the pressure was coming on Love. He threw it to Dobbs.
Oh, yeah.
Dobbs had already broken off his route to go to a wide open space in the end zone. Didn't work out. That'll come with time. Could have been a huge night for Romeo Dobbs. He'll have to settle for a great night instead. Dobbs has 25 targets over the last 2 weeks. I know I should bite my tongue. I know you don't care about targets, but
Yeah, I do. Love targets.
Okay, you do. You do like targets. And this is kind of like what we saw last week against the Saints, where he had a lot of production at the end of the game. I've heard some fantasy pundits out there tell me that Romeo Dobbs is actually the number one receiver out there and not Christian Watson. I'm not fully on board with that right now. But again, when we're talking about high-stakes fantasy football and trying to get the best guys that you have in the window where they're succeeding, Romeo Dobbs is in a window right now. He gets the Raiders on Monday Night Football, and I think it's going to be very difficult to sit him, especially with 4 teams on bye, Ferrell. I loved what I saw from Dobbs.
Some of those things are correct. The most correct thing you said that I will temper with a footnote. Only a Packer fan could call that almost a touchdown for Romeo Dobbs. Only a Packer fan. So there's my footnote. Now, I will say this. Let's return to that score again, 27-3. The team did a good job. Detroit did a very, very good job of rolling the secondary towards Watson. So the quarterback was smart enough. He's a young player. They're asking him to play with discipline. He's smart enough to take what the defense was giving, and what they were giving was Romeo Dobbs underneath. And he still had to work for it because there's some good corners on that Detroit team. But I think that you factor in the fact that there's a Musgrave injury. You factor in that there was nothing in the running attack, just absolutely nothing. So you're in a situation where Dobbs is definitely going to have a big game. Now, you said something with Watson out there. Dobbs doesn't have a big season without Watson being on the field with it. Because this is a great 1-2 punch. And I believe in this player. I've loved this player. Shameless outreach to come play in our KFFSC Super Bowl League on Super Bowl Sunday weekend, because the players were drafting him in the 18th, 19th, 20th round. We were close to Valentine's Day. I was giving out hints. I said it's a romantic name. You couldn't get a lot of people biting on the receiver out of Nevada. But yeah, there's a lot of what you're saying here is right. I think that listeners need to understand, at least from my perspective, and they may agree with me, may disagree with me, but when you're going to play against better defenses, and when you're going to play in a game like this, and give the Packers credit, they got back in the game. They got the fans moving. Detroit stopped them. Look, Dobbs is going to score a lot of fantasy points this year. He's going to get some in situations like we were in last night. But with Watson on the field, he's going to draw the rolling safety in most of these coverages. On cover 2, he's going to be open because there'll be a lot of space. Did the Packers play Pittsburgh this year?
Do they play Pittsburgh?
If they do.
They do not. They do not. I'm sorry, they do not.
Against that coverage that Pittsburgh has, Romeo Dobbs would have 200 yards. So,
Wow.
because he's a very good receiver at finding the spots in the secondary. The quarterback's good at getting the ball. A lot of these talk about receivers, when you weren't drafting Watson and when you weren't drafting Dobbs, there's a lot of guys that didn't believe in the quarterback. We've had belief in this quarterback all through the year, Balky. And, if you drafted these receivers, you're going to be way ahead because the quarterback's a good quarterback.
And I think he showed promise in the second half. He's been inconsistent so far. We knew that was going to happen. It's going to continue to happen so far this season. But
inconsistent as an NFL quarterback, consistent as a fantasy performer.
That's exactly right. Could not have put it better myself. Speaking of inconsistency at quarterback,
I think I heard you say that.
Yes, you did hear me. Yes,
you did.
Deshaun Watson officially listed as questionable for the Ravens game this Sunday. Now, he actually spoke with reporters. Mary Kay Cabot had this story from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. He said, "I'm okay. I'll play." Now, when he practiced today, Ferrell, he didn't do much. Like, he had a couple of throws, he stopped, he talked to trainers, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson took over. Now, I don't necessarily – I think Watson is an easy sit in FFPC, KFFSC leagues this week when you're only have to start one quarterback. What becomes interesting – two things become interesting here. Number one, if you're in a Superflex league, I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is interesting if Watson ends up being ruled out. I don't know if he will be. But the big thing here is, what are you doing with guys like David Njoku? What are you doing with guys like Elijah Moore, Jerome Ford, Amari Cooper? If Watson does not go, or if he re-injures the shoulder because he couldn't finish practice today, are you a little bit skittish about starting these guys? Now, I think that if you're loaded at wide receiver, certainly you can make the case that, okay, maybe I'm not going to play Cooper. I think by and large, most people are playing Cooper. Yeah. But Jerome Ford, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, these are tough decisions based on what's going on with the quarterback. Why don't you weigh in on this? How would you handle it if you owned any of those Browns players?
I'm fascinated by this. This was probably on draft day. This was the thing that I did not understand. I'm talking about NFL draft day. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe that Thompson-Robinson was still available in the 5th round. And then when Cleveland picked him, it made so much sense. And now this week we're talking about him taking the field. And I love this player. I think he's tough. I think he's versatile. He makes dynamic plays in the field. The knock against him from the scouting community is he would get out of control. He lacked discipline, game awareness. That was a problem for him. And it's very interesting they're playing Baltimore, because that was the same thing that the scouting community said about Lamar Jackson, with the exception of the Ravens. That's why he was still available there in the 1st round. You know, I think this guy could have easily been drafted like Lamar Jackson was. It only takes one GM to love you. And these guys passed on him. I don't know, 5th round, 140th player. It's a very, very good quarterback. I like his strength, the way he gets rid of the ball, timing and touch. He was a player that I enjoyed watching most in preseason. So if he plays, I'm not worried at all. You know, he probably got very limited reps with Amari Cooper. Mm-hmm. And so he's probably sitting there looking at all this film and goes, you know, one of these days I'm going to throw the ball to Cooper. If he gets on the field, it's Cooper all day long. So you know, if you have Cooper and no other Browns, you might root for the fact that this player gets to play. But yeah, I'm going to roll my Browns out there. I'm going to roll with this quarterback, and that's what I have to say about that.
I think DTR is interesting, from a super flex perspective. I'm sure he's already been picked up, but if you do have the opportunity to add him in an FFPC super flex league, he could be a very interesting second quarterback.
You know, Big Noli over here is playing me this weekend,
yes.
And he refuses to lose. And most people that do play me head on head refuse to lose. But I find doing battle with Big Noli vexing enough. I don't have to try these super flex situations to get my challenge. But if you are, you should get this player on your team.
The Bicknoli Ferrell Bowl underway here in week 4 in the FFPC.
I'd like to see his lineup.
Yes, exactly. Jeff Hallas, the leader in the FFPC main event after the first week, and current 7th place team in the FFPC main event, is going to join us shortly. The last thing I want to get to before we get to Jeff, and this is another thing too that I think is, you know, I'm always trying to get into like roster situations and start sits. And I think a player that could stand to be a second flex, if you wanted to roll with it, like maybe you got hit hard with Mike Williams or somebody else who's going to miss this week. Logan Thomas is no longer on the week 4 injury report. He's going to play against the Eagles. Now, he didn't play in week 3 after Kareem Jackson hit him with that hit in week 2, and then he missed with the concussion. In 1.5 games, he's got 6 catches, 65 yards. I think that the Commanders are going to have tough sledding trying to utilize Gibson and Robinson out of the backfield. Jahan Dotson has been MIA for whatever reason this year. I don't know why.
Hard to explain.
Samuel is there, but he's not a difference maker. Logan Thomas could be the number 2 target this week. Ferrell, am I giving Logan Thomas too much love here, or is this guy actually viable for certain FFPC teams based on your construction that you could slide him in as a second flex this week?
No, you shouldn't be playing Logan Thomas. Now, it's the true fool's gold of tight ends, because when he's on, he is on, and he looks so good doing it. I mean, he's 6'6", 250 pounds. He catches the ball well. Everybody knows he can't stay healthy, but if you look at his situations, I mean, he's had, I don't know, Balky, is either 2019 or 2020, but he's had 1 year. And the rest of the time he's missed time. But even when he's played, that 1 year that he had, and he was an all-pro that year, but it was a Goddard-like year. It was not a breakthrough year like our top tight ends. Plus, Washington's got two tight ends I really like. Both of them come from the Mountain West. Bates is one of them, which is a good soft hands, good blocking tight end. The other guy,
Cole Turner.
Yeah, Cole Turner from Nevada. Cole Turner is a hybrid player that needs space to perform in, but he can catch the ball and run with it. And he's 32 years old. So how much play is your 32-year-old off-injured tight end going to get in an offense that's got a lot of weapons that they're trying to develop? I don't see it. I think we can move on.
There is a such thing as getting too cute, and Logan Thomas might be too cute.
That's what I'm
for
saying.
Week 4 lineups. Ferrell, I think I'm with you on that one as well. Let's get to the real expert of the program tonight. He led the FFPC main event after 1 week of play. He currently sits in 7th place overall in the FFPC main event as he chases that $1 million grand prize. Please welcome onto the show, making his HSFF Hour debut. It is Jeff Hallas. Jeff, welcome in, man. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
What's up, guys?
Hello, Jeff.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going better now that we have a guy with some real true skin in the game at the top of the leaderboard here. Now, was it I might have misspoke before. Were you leading the main event after week 1 or week 2? 2. Week 2. Okay.
And it was the first time I looked. I didn't even think to look at the leaderboard or anything like that. And I was just like, oh, I want to see, because I had a ton of points. And I looked and I was like, I was close. And then I had I think it was Watson on a Monday night, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I was inching. And finally, and I didn't start Dimes, and Dimes got like 35 points. And I was like, damn, I hate leaving points on the bench. But yeah, Watson was just like slowly creeping up, not doing anything. And I looked and I was like, wow, I'm in first. Holy shit. This is probably going to
That's all right. And so now, and I didn't look at your team. Now, did you have, because we had some Bafo scores in week 3 this past week, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Devon A-Chain, Raheem Mostert, all those guys. Did you have any of those guys in your lineup this week?
No.
And you're still in 7th place, which really is a testament to how strong your team is, that you can weather that type of storm and still be ahead of thousands of other teams in this chase for $1 million. You got to be feeling pretty great. I mean, I know you'd much rather have one of those 40-point scores in your lineup, but seeing yourself in 7th place here, you got to be feeling pretty good about that, dude.
I had A-Chain, or A-Chain, however you're saying his name now.
A-Chan.
Yeah, A-Chain. I had him on the bench. I didn't even think to.
No one did.
Well, you know what you say when you see that Mostert has like 28 points at halftime, you go, boy, I sure am glad I didn't start the other Dolphins running back. Boy, I'm a genius. And then, look at that. That's okay. This weekend, what's your plans for him this weekend? And what did you learn watching him run by a overheated, beaten down Denver defense?
I think I'm going to play him and just accept the outcome. That's what I think I'm going to do.
I like that. Yeah, because if he repeated it, wouldn't you'd have a hard time living with yourself. 20-point performance, even if he did that,
Yeah, I had Montgomery on the bench last night too, and that was kind of sickening.
Yeah, me too in a bunch of leagues. I'm over it already.
I would have, of my team, Mixon would have been on the bench just because of the matchup. And if it was a healthy Montgomery, I mean, he'd have been in there, no doubt. But he's coming back off a thigh bruise, which doesn't sound serious, but you know how the NFL goes, and it's a Thursday night, and he's the one saying he'll be out for 3 weeks. It was I can't. I'm just not even going to risk it. I'd rather take the points as opposed to him aggravating the injury on his second carry, and so.
The other thing too here, Jeff, is, and I think this is, sort of a microcosm where we're at in fantasy football. I played Aaron Jones in a bunch of leagues last night when I found out he was active, expecting that he'd put up decent numbers. Not only did he not put up decent numbers, he was hardly on the field. And then two, I had plenty of David Montgomery on my squads. Didn't start him in any leagues because and this is where we're at. Aaron Jones coming in as questionable. He's active, coming off the hamstring strain, and then David Montgomery coming in questionable with the thigh bruise. He gets a career high in carries. Aaron Jones barely sees the field.
Right.
I don't really know how we as fantasy players are supposed to feel good or bad about whatever decisions we made on that.
Right.
I don't know how to predict stuff like that.
Right. And then you have Christian Watson too. I mean, he's out with the hamstring for the first 3 games of the season, or the first 2 games of the season, whatever it was. And he comes back and you're like, he's going to run a post route and he's going to re-injure the hamstring. I mean, how do you even get him in? I mean, I'll tell you one thing, I have other teams that are in the Fantasy Pros leagues. And everywhere I had Montgomery there, I started him.
Yeah.
I have 2 main event teams and I didn't start him in either one. I mean, the nerves.
He needed more time.
Yeah,
I left him off the team. I left him off the team, and I know I had 3 phone calls between 6 and 7:30, and long, drawn out conversations. If I hadn't got those phone calls, he would have been in my lineup. Sometimes you need a little more time to think about it.
Yeah, or not think at all and just put him in.
Yeah,
that's true. That's another good way to look at it. I don't know how long you thought about your 18th round pick in this league that you're in 7th place overall, but you took Zach Moss there.
Mm-hmm.
Been a huge success for you this season. Is there any reason for you to think that he is not going to continue that success now that we will not have Gardner Minshew under center for Indianapolis? We're going to have Anthony Richardson back under center. Do you think Moss keeps this up and he's a good start for FFPC players this week? Because I know there's some people that are kind of a little bit iffy about starting him now. My opinion is the only person that worries me is Taylor. I get the whole Anthony Richardson tush push and running quarterback and stuff like that, but he already has 1 concussion. I'm pretty sure he self-reported a concussion in week 1. And they said that he was fine and he got back on the field. Steichen's pretty smart. I think they're going to try to not Jalen Hurts him, Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. I mean, when you have such a freak athlete like that, I mean, you want to, because it's, but I saw they tried to tush push with him and he couldn't get in with it. I think everyone's going to try to mirror the Jalen Hurts thing. And there's only one Jalen Hurts. There's only
one Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Not only do you wear your hat like Dave Turp, but you think like him too. That's exactly what's going on there. There's a lot of nonsensical stuff going on in the chat room now. Some of it we can't repeat. Some of it I don't even know what in the hell it means.
All right, well, I'll tell you.
When were you at Planet Hollywood, Jeff? You were at Planet Hollywood this year. You got to come and play live. That's what the FFPC is all about. When you go to the Thursday night viewing party, it's the greatest thing in the world. But sometimes, like in our chat room, people will come in and say things that just don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And when you do that, that's what I usually, say, well, I try to get them to quit talking about fantasy football and start talking about bourbon or something like that. Or, but what guy came up to me and says, Nico Collins can't play. He's overrated. And, I said, you've obviously used all your drink tickets. Is that what you've done? What's the situation with you? But you let it pass. You change the subject because you don't want to get in a conversation with someone like that. Now, you drafted Collins in the 10th round.
Uh-huh.
I tried to be too cheap. I was going to draft him in the 9th, and somebody got him at the end of the 8th. This was a player I was targeting. How much thought process? Not much. did you put into Nico Collins? Because that disappoints me. Because I wanted you to tell me,
No.
oh man, it was Nico Collins all the way.
No, I wanted Nico. I absolutely wanted Nico.
Why? That's what I want to know. Why did you?
Well, he had 64 targets last year with Davis Mills.
Limited play.
Yeah, I mean, 37 catches, 57. I mean, some crazy stat that like 30 or 40% of the balls thrown to him were uncatchable.
Mm-hmm.
Stroud's accurate. Nico's 6'4", 215. He's not a great route runner, but I mean,
getting better.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, okay.
There was no. I mean, to me, there was no question. They're going to have to throw the ball because they're not good.
I think they might be better than we think they are.
I agree.
And I think I hear this word league winner. I don't think any player is a league winner. But when I saw that you had this player in the 10th round, I think that's where you make a real difference. And I'm surprised that a player like this in his second year would be available in the 10th round. Again, it comes back to unproven rookie quarterback who's not so unproven. Who's playing better than I think any of us imagined that he would.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get back to the chat room here real quick because I actually forgot about this. But ML was watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show last night with myself and Darren Armani, and somebody called in or somebody put on the chat like, "Hey, should I start Montgomery or these other guys?" And we said, "Oh, you got to bench Montgomery." Like he was the one guy we didn't consider. And then I said, after I said, like, "Okay, you're going to sit Montgomery," I said, watch him run for 150 and 3 touchdowns. Well, he did get the 3 touchdowns last night, but only 141 yards. So I wasn't totally accurate.
9 yards off.
Yeah, 9 yards off. And let me tell you, I've been sick about it today. I thought I'd hear about it more, but people are kind. Usually people are kind to me, and it's been good so far.
So me and my cousin have stakes, and I have 6 teams with him, 6 of the Fantasy Pro teams with him. And I think we have Monty on one of them or whatever, but I have Monty in local leagues, like with friends and stuff like that, and we've just all day back and forth. Like, I'm sick. I didn't start him. I'm so sick. I didn't start him. He's saying the same thing. I mean, all day, just what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? I mean, that is fantasy. I always say that's fantasy. It happens, and you got to trust the process over the results, and that's what we'll continue to do. Yeah. I want to ask you about your backup wide receivers on this team in 7th place. So you got Calvin Austin, Rashad Bateman, who's already been ruled out this week. You got Van Jefferson, KJ Osborne, and Josh Reynolds. Which one of these guys do you think you have the highest hopes for going forward? And I want to frame this in the sense of some of these guys may or may not be available in a Fantasy Pros or an FFPC main event league. Which one of these guys, if they're out there in their league, would you tell an FFPC player, hey, make sure you grab this guy out of those 5?
Probably Reynolds.
Why Reynolds? Because Jamison Williams is coming back this week.
I'm not a believer. I mean, he's good. He's good. Can he stay on the field? He has 1 NFL catch. I don't. He's good. I'm not taking away from the skill, but I don't know. I think he's going to have to earn targets. I don't think that if it's working with what they have with Amon-Ra and Reynolds and Laporta, and I'm not too scared of it. I think if you would ask me this in preseason, I would have said Rashad Bateman all day. I didn't think Zay would come on like he did. And I mean, we know what Odell is. I mean,
we had Zay, the prophet was here. We had Zay penciled in for 90 catches. The prophet said so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, write that stuff down. The prophet. The prophet also said Mike Williams is likely to be injured.
Oh.
He has a huge following. The prophet does.
Massive, absolutely massive.
And so when the prophecy was fulfilled, as we realize now, we say goodbye to one of the most exciting players in the league. So now who steps up? Is there any belief? And I saw Joshua Palmer all over the waiver wire, and I was glad that I smart enough to draft him or fortunate enough to draft him this spring in best ball. Now, is there any belief that Gerald Everett can become the tight end that we think he ought to be?
I wanted him in the preseason. He was attached to a great quarterback and a good offense. Kellen Moore coming over there. you kind of got the Dalton Schultz vibes from him. I did, at least. When you
Was that a good vibe or a bad vibe?
No, good. Because you could get him to the late,
Yeah, okay, I got you.
I wanted him everywhere as like my second tight end because he was so cheap, and why not? But he's, his snap percentage is, around 55%. I mean, like you can't live like that now. And you also have Parham who gets red zone targets. I don't know. It's going to be tough. I don't know. I still believe that Herbert's going to want some sort of, I don't know, but want to be comfortable. And he's going to I think Quentin Johnson could emerge later.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But I think in the next couple weeks, I think he's going to want some familiarity. And I mean, in a pinch, in a desperate situation, I'd probably start Everett as my second. I could start Everett as like my second flex. I mean, if you have guys like, I don't know, I'm just going to throw people out there like Treylon Burks or KJ Osborne or whatever. I mean, you can consider, in my opinion, Gerald Everett. I mean, you get 1.5 points per reception too. I mean, it doesn't take him much to get there, to get 12 points, 10, 12 points. So not much upside, but
2 catches, 2 targets for 4 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week for Parham. And Everett's been kind of unfortunate in that. But if the Chargers keep utilizing him in the red zone like that, then we have another conversation to have. Let's go back to ML here, who has a question in the YouTube chat. Kadarius Toney was dropped out of 337 main event leagues. He was dropped in 11 of them. If he is available in a main event league and you still have, right around or roughly $1,000 left, how much would be reasonable to bid on Kadarius Toney if you only care about the upside of the players you're adding and not necessarily a low floor? How would you handle something like that, Jeff?
With specifically this player?
With Kadarius Toney, yes.
$1.
If he's available. So you are not a believer in Toney at all? No.
Why? I'm coming in with $9.98, fellas. I'm coming in hard because we have prophesized that this player is the player in Kansas City, and after he had a 6 for 35 after we said that, and we've got guys that must not be FFPC players in the chat room.
That's my cousin right there that you just.
Is that Philip Kearns? Is your cousin?
That's my cousin. Yeah.
Well, the family sticks together. We got to love that.
Yeah. I like Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice is. Yeah. I think
you should. You should.
I think he's going to be the guy outside of Kelsey and McKinnon when he has his games.
Right.
Yeah,
be Rashee.
That was my next question for you, Jeff. Like, are you just not a believer in any Kansas City receiver? But it sounds like Rashee Rice could be the guy down the road for you.
Yeah, I just learned, I've played fantasy football for a long time. You notice patterns, and everyone wants to make a Kansas City wide receiver the next best thing. So they get caught up in Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, and I do it too. I'm guilty too. But he's talented as shit, but I mean, like, he can't stay on the field, and he's getting like 1 yard targets. Like he's, those bubble screens, and there's just not much,
When the double-digit weeks get here, the double-digit receptions will for Tony.
I'm not doubting you. I won't pay to find out. Let's put it like that.
Well, technically, your bid is in the ideal range according to ML. The ideal range is 1 to 998. So somewhere in there. You're at.
Well, we answered the question.
You're at the low end of the spectrum. I get it. I have to ask you too, Jeff. Now you have 3 quarterbacks on this 7th place team: Stafford, Daniel Jones, and Deshaun Watson. Right now, what's that?
Dumpster fire.
Okay, well, you say that, but let's get into this a little bit. So I guess 2-part question here. You have Jones in as your starting quarterback this week, which, by the way, I would be doing the same thing. I want to get your thoughts on it. And then number 2, why the 3 quarterbacks? Why is it important to have these all 3 of these guys on your team?
So when I took Watson, I was like, I need somebody else that's going to be somewhat reliable. And I don't know why I thought that would be Daniel Jones, but I did. Daniel Jones had that first week, and he was just god awful. I mean, I watched the game. I think it was a primetime game, if I'm not mistaken. And he was, I think that was against Dallas, maybe. I don't know. It was bad, like bad. That's why I didn't play him in week 2, and then he goes off, scores 37 points. But regardless, I was looking at my team, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to kind of stream quarterbacks here because you can't trust Deshaun. It doesn't seem like he's taken. It's not old Deshaun. It's not 2019 Deshaun. I was like, and then I was looking at expected points. I don't know if it's a sticky stat or not, but I was looking at expected points on PFF, and Stafford had underperformed his expected points by a lot. And he's thrown to Puka, potentially coming back, Tutu, Higbee. I mean, he has weapons, and it's Matt Stafford. So I'm like, all right, well, at least I'll have another quarterback I can throw in the rotation to think about and potentially stream week by week because, I don't have a top tier quarterback. I waited on the quarterback. So I try to get quarterbacks with upside that have wheels that can run. And I did that, but that doesn't always work. So I picked up Stafford off of waivers, and I was going to use him last week. And last second, I was like, nah, I'm just let me stick with Watson, and we'll give him one more week and see what happens. And thank God I did, because Stafford was brutal in Cincy, and I think I don't know what Deshaun got me, maybe 22 points or whatever it was. So yeah. Anyway, long story short, I just want the option. If any of them have a bad matchup, they get rolled out. I mean, that's just what it is,
Well, the kid from UCLA is available too, so you could add a 4th quarterback.
Who's that? What's his name again?
Thompson.
Dorian Thompson Robinson from Cleveland.
Yeah.
We've given him big props while you were in the green room.
Yeah.
Well, besides your trio of mighty quarterbacks, you may have some other tough lineup decisions this weekend. Now, you can make mistakes sometimes when you've got a good team and you don't have any bye weeks and you don't have any injuries.
Yeah.
But what are you trying to get accomplished? I think I'll give you a couple. To run Josh Kelly out there again is difficult. To do anything with receivers that aren't Andrews or Flowers at Baltimore is difficult to me. What are you thinking about? What's a problem for you this weekend?
It already happened. I mean,
is it Montgomery?
Yeah.
You guys going to relive that Montgomery stuff all again? We can't use that. We've already used that in the show. It's been written out of the script.
I think Mixon is
okay. I agree with you.
Terrible play this week. Terrible.
Yeah.
Just me, but I think he's terrible.
And I'm looking at your roster here. I mean, obviously you can't play Montgomery, but I mean, I don't know who you would put in over Mixon at this
right.
point.
No.
Yeah, it'd probably be Cook or Montgomery. It'd probably be Cook or Everett, right? And you can't conceivably sit either of those guys for Mixon.
Yeah,
I think you just hope that Mixon gets double digits and say, "Hey, we'll take it against that Tennessee rush."
If he falls in the end zone and gets 2-3 catches, I'm happy.
Let's get to a couple of emails here for you, Jeff. George in New London, Connecticut. This is interesting, and we probably should have brought this up at the top of the show. He writes, is Deebo Samuel going to go this week? And I think this is fascinating for a few reasons. Number one, Deebo Samuel has not officially practiced at all this week. He was doing, I think, sprinting on the side of practice today. He had the rib injury and the knee injury. He got in a limited practice today, but and Kyle Shanahan actually kind of downplayed this at the early part of this week, but the Niners are 3-0. The Niners are playing the Arizona Cardinals at home, and this is a 4:25 game, which obviously adds to the intrigue of what do you do with Deebo Samuel. What is your gut telling you, Jeff Hallas? Do you think Samuel gives it a go this week?
Yeah.
No question.
No question. He played through the rib injury last week.
So, and the missed practice time, this does not worry you at all, even though it is a late game.
Not with him.
Okay. All right.
Tough as nails, something to prove. That's the way the 49ers play. And we're going to see more of that through the league because these 49ers are all over the league. They're in Houston and they're in Miami, and there's a little bit of them everywhere. And I love what it's doing to football. Boggy, you got emails? Or
One more email, and it actually pertains to your Raiders, Ferrell. Tom in Boston writes, and I didn't check the Jimmy Garoppolo injury report here, whether he's cleared concussion protocol yet, but Tom in Boston wants to know, Jeff, he has not cleared it. Okay. Tom in Boston, how do you feel about the Raiders this week if Jimmy G can't go? Thank you for watching and emailing Tom. I think, Jeff, before I get your take on this, I'm playing Adams no matter what. Ferrell could be tossing him the rock. Adams would still find a way to get 7 catches for about 100 yards.
He'd be my go-to guy.
He'd be your go-to guy for sure. He'd be anybody's go-to guy. So you're playing him, obviously. I think it becomes a little bit more interesting with guys like, maybe not Michael Mayer, but guys like Hunter Renfrow, guys like Jacoby Myers. How do your thoughts change about Aiden O'Connell throwing into these Raiders as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo and starting these Raiders skill position guys?
I mean, you're never sitting Adams. You're never sitting Jacobs. I mean, Jacoby might, flex territory.
Even with O'Connell?
I mean,
well, I don't think Jeff knows a whole lot about Aiden O'Connell.
I don't.
That would be, and he doesn't have to, nor should he.
The pride of Purdue University.
Yeah. Jeff, just let me put it this way. The Raiders were able to go out and find a quarterback with less athleticism in the pocket than Garoppolo. He's a college quarterback with, So I don't, let's just hope that Garoppolo plays. But I could tell you guys, so you don't have to turn back the clock too long to see what Jacobs did in the rushing game at the Chargers last year. Now, I know that's last year, but Jacobs is due to break out of this funk that he's in. And this would be the game where I expect some type of significant contribution, no matter who's at quarterback, from the Raider running back.
I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know who he is, but I don't know who he is.
and listen, you're not alone for sure on that. I wouldn't worry about it.
And I hope he proves me completely wrong, because I really always root for the young quarterback.
I would have said Hoyer was their backup. I mean, I don't know why, but
no. Now I should ask that now, because now I'm thinking like maybe I'm wrong on that. Is it O'Connell or is it Hoyer?
No, you're probably right. I don't. No, you're right.
It is O'Connell.
Oh wait, it says Adams noted Raiders two backup quarterbacks, Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell.
Oh, God.
It's a coin flip.
It's a coin flip. God, it's even worse.
You're in trouble either way, I guess.
It's worse than I thought, people. It's worse than I thought.
I mean, generally when they're like, you have to flip the coin between the two backups. I mean, you're not in good shape.
Josh McDaniels is going to do the Billy Martin where he just pulls the name out of the hat in the locker room before the game. Like, okay, you're QB1 today.
Hey, Maurice Jenkins showed up.
Yeah.
Oh, is Bruce in there? All right. There he is. Yeah, absolutely. We always love seeing Mo. Ferrell, I am fresh out of emails. One last question for Mr. Hallas tonight.
All right. We're going to start keeping score of who comes with this, because the last couple guests have been great guests, but they're faltering on this question. And I'm going to ask it differently than I've asked it in a while. So I want to know, Mr. Jeff Hallas, who is your heartbreaker and who will be the legend maker? They'll say Hallas was on and he told them to do that. Look what happened. So I want a heartbreaker and a legend maker from Hallas.
Can I give
It's a good damn name for football, by the way, Balky. I don't know if anyone's brought that up. You know, with all your Lombardi and your Lambeau and your this and your that. The Hallas is a pretty damn good name for football.
Here's the thing, and not a lot of Packers fans will admit this. The Packers would not be in existence today if it wasn't for George Hallas and the Bears coming through to keep the Packers solvent. Otherwise, there would be no Packers. So, that I do hold the Hallas name in as high a regard as I can as a Packers fan.
Eric, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. We appreciate it here in Wisconsin for sure.
Can I give you two?
Yes, please.
On the Heartbreakers?
Yes.
Chan.
Okay.
He's going to break hearts. He's going to break my heart.
Now, hold on. I got to stop you. That might be the first time that we've had somebody come out and say, I'll tell you what, you know who's going to break a lot of hearts? Is this guy, and I'm starting him.
The one I'm starting. 100%.
All right, I'm sorry. Go on, Jeff. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think, I would say, I don't know. Just law of averages. Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Oh, how? Is he not going to throw a touchdown? What do you mean? How's he going to break your heart?
And by heartbreaker, I mean, he might score like 18 points.
Yeah.
And that's a disappointment at this point, you know?
Oh, okay. Well, previously in the show, you might have taken a break then, but we discussed Williams no longer being available. I just want to point that out.
Well, we talked about it with Jeff.
Yeah, we previously in the show.
I know full well because he's on this team. And he's not on this team anymore.
Right. That's one of those things where I always feel like before I cut like Nick Chubb or J.K. Dobbins or Mike Williams or whatever, when I put in my waiver bids in KFFSC, I'm like, all right, am I sure he's out for the year? Like, do I really want it's always difficult to do. Yep. Always difficult to do it.
You want to wait a week.
Any chance of coming back? Is there any chance of coming back?
Maybe they just put him on there for 4 weeks. They come up with some miracle treatment. He goes with Aaron Rodgers to Mexico for some weird doctor. 100% the ACL. I don't know. I never know. Yeah. Those are your heartbreakers.
Yeah.
Legend makers.
Legend maker.
Who are the legend makers this week? Or at least one legend maker this week.
Steve Dunlap's a legend maker.
That's my cousin.
He's like your press agent. I love it. He's stirring it up.
He's young and he's.
I love Steve Dunlap. Where does he live? Where does Dunlap stay?
We're all in Pittsburgh.
I'm hitting the road a little bit. I gotta find that kid.
I'm sorry if he pissed you off.
No, I love him. I love the Dunlap.
Yeah, Ferrell doesn't get
great.
I think Brandon Cooks is so due. I mean, there's nothing really that would suggest that he's due, but it's Brandon Cooks. He's not. I don't think he's washed yet. He's only 28. It seems like he's been around the league for 10 years. But I mean, like,
one of Balky's favorites.
I think Cook. I think it's going to be a Cooks week. I think they play New England.
Yeah, in Dallas.
I think Bill's going to steam something up to shut Lamb down, maybe shut the run down. But I think Cooks. I would say Cooks. I think Cooks is going to have a good week.
Cooks is interesting this week for sure. I mean, if he was ever going to do it, this would be a good week to do it here for him. And Ferrell's right. I mean, like the amount of Brandon Cooks and Tyler Lockett teams I've had over the years would make anybody blush. Like two guys, I feel like, all right, I guess I'm taking this guy again. And usually, by and large, they've come through for me.
They never disappoint.
Cook's not so far this year, but you're right. I think he could be due. And let me tell you, Jeff, you might be due for a $1 million payday in the FFPC main event, or maybe a couple of $1 million paydays as you're going hard in the Fantasy Pros Championship as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Congratulations on the early season success. Best of luck to you. Hopefully the ball bounces your way the remainder of the season. Absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy your weekend, dude. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You got it. Jeff Hallas, ladies and gentlemen, the 7th place team owner in the FFPC main event, heading in to week 4, joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Good dude. Good to hear from him. And his cousin's just making the YouTube chat so
I love those guys. I love his crew.
He's got a good crew. He's got a good crew. Mo is on board with the Cooks call. Maurice Jenkins says, "Let's go Cooks. Let's go."
Mo.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little biased, but Kern too. I mean, he loves his Cowboys. He's on board.
I want to see what those guys have to say after Ezekiel peels off 150 yards against them this weekend. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
It would be interesting.
That would be a legend maker.
He'd be a heartbreaker and a legend maker, all rolled in one. Be the same. Let's pound out a few starts or sits the last couple of minutes of the show here. Ferrell.
Okay.
Eli, Newark, Pennsylvania, Zach Ertz or Jake Ferguson. Speaking of Cowboys, Jake Ferguson. Zach Ertz came out like he was really, really good the first couple of weeks, and it kind of surprised me. Came back down a little bit this past week. But when you look at the matchups this week, we already talked about Ferguson being at home against the New England Patriots. That's his matchup. Zach Ertz is going to be on the road in the Bay Area taking on the Niners. I think I lean towards Ferguson here. What say you?
I'm going with Ertz. I'm going to let the young quarterback find the tight end, get the ball out quickly, and get it to him. So, yeah, Ertz plays more like a slot receiver in this game.
If he does, yeah, slam dunk start for him for sure. Could be a boppo game. And by the way, Marquise Brown listed as questionable on the injury report too. There's a non-zero. I think he goes, but there's a non-zero chance he misses, which would make Ertz that much more desirable for Dobbs in that offense.
Yeah.
Now here's an interesting one, Ferrell. Speaking of the Niners, and who wrote this here? This is Bill in Westerville, Ohio. He's got Joe Burrow and he's got Brock Purdy and he's in Ohio. So can he sit his beloved Joe Burrow this week in favor of Brock Purdy against the Cardinals? Burrow taking on the Ravens? No, it's not the Ravens.
No,
they play the Browns. It's why am I missing this here?
I don't know.
Titans. I'm sorry. Joe Burrow is in Nashville to take on the Titans. It's either him or it's Purdy at home against the Cardinals. I am a weak man, but I think I might be strong enough to start Purdy over Burrow here until I see it from Burrow. And I saw a little bit last week, but I know he's still hobbled. And Purdy just has been Mr. Consistent so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going with Purdy with all those weapons that he has in a game that should reward him with lots of scoring opportunities. Burrow, I believe in. If I didn't have such a great selection of quarterbacks there, I might be thinking something else. But, Burrow is in a situation where he might have to leave the game during the game. That's one of the things that could happen with that injury. So, Purdy's an easy choice for me there.
I think you have to look at too, like this is not for all the marbles or anything like that. You're trying to still pile up points in the meantime, and I think Purdy's a safer bet to pile up points for you this week than a hobbled Joe Burrow. This is an interesting one, and it comes to us from our viewer Matt in Amarillo, Texas. Breece Hall or Jaylen Warren. Breece Hall at home against the Chiefs on Sunday night. Jaylen Warren, who is at the Houston Texans. We already got it in the YouTube chat. Somebody said, and I beg your pardon, I forgot who it was. But he said, can I trust Najee Harris this week? I said, I can't. But Jaylen Warren is a little bit interesting when you're talking about a stagnated New York Jets rushing attack here, Ferrell. Who would you play, Breece Hall or Jaylen Warren?
I'm going to play Breece Hall on the fact that I can count on Breece Hall to reel off an 83-yarder or a 46-yarder like he's already done this year.
Yes, he has.
And that's what I want to do. Jaylen Warren's going to split carries with the guy that I haven't figured out who they want to be the running back. It looks like Warren. I steered clear of both those guys in that situation. I'm proud I did, and I like watching everybody else have to figure it out. But in this case, Breece Hall would be my guy. That offense has to work somehow. That quarterback has to get some help. It's going to come from Hall in a variety of ways. He's going to have the opportunity to deliver. I'm going to go with Hall.
I want to go to the YouTube chat right now. James Byers is in there hanging out. He's got a question. Do I start Puka Nacua or Brandon Ayuk? Puka Nacua is at Indianapolis. Brandon Ayuk is at home against the Cardinals. John Terry, who has won a ton of money in the FFPC, weighed in. He said Ayuk at the risk of damaging my reputation and James Byers' fantasy team. I'm still going to go with Nacua here, Ferrell. Who would you start, Nacua?
I'm going to go with Nacua as well. There's too much vibe going on in that situation of making Nakua work. I'm surprised he didn't catch some balls in the last outing that he possibly could have. Yeah, I very much like that player. Now, Ayuka is one of my favorite players in the league. If we were 1 week away from this and I saw that he was completely healthy and not on a snap count, then, I might agree with John Terry. But, look, if those are if that's your last receiver, you should really just go ahead and get in touch with the financial manager and a tax man and start discussing what you're going to do with the $1 million. If you don't have anybody else to sit in those guys, don't be bothering us with that.
John Terry's saying that Deebo's going to sit. So I think if you think Samuel sits, then that might make a difference. We just heard from Jeff Hallas. He thinks that Samuel's going to play. I'm of the belief that he probably will too, but non-zero chance of anything. So
I think there's another question about who you should. I just said that though, so I think everybody understood what I said.
He also has Stephon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb as James Byers. So yeah, he should start spending that.
Yeah, just start spending the money.
Start reinvesting.
If you want a Ferrari, you have to order it. If you want one now, a new one, you have to order it now to get it to 2026.
Really?
Yeah, that's.
Oh my God. It's insane.
They sold out, and it's fantastic. I don't own a Ferrari.
Yeah,
but I every year I buy a few shares of stock in the company, and that's how I know these things.
I don't own a Ferrari either, but I probably won't own one in 2026 either because I'm not ordering one today for sure. Yeah. Last one. This is kind of an interesting one too here, Ferrell. This comes from Glenn in Greenville, South Carolina. He's got a wide receiver question. Tank Dell or DeAndre Hopkins? Tank Dell, obviously, we already talked about it. He's at home against the Steelers. Hopkins is going to be at home against the Bengals. If you can only pick one, would you play Dell over Hopkins? I think I would, even though Burks is probably going to be out this week. Actually, Burks is already out this week. I'm still going to play Dell over Hopkins.
When Burks was active, he was catching 2 passes a game. It was very impressive. Call up Dave Turp and let him know. By the way, the most targeted receiver, Robert Woods. Just saying that, Turp.
Really?
Okay, yeah. All right. So here's what we want to talk about. Hopkins will catch everything that is thrown his way when it is accurate and on time. It's been neither. He and Tannehill don't look like they've ever been on the football field together. I have to go to a lot of college all-star games, and sometimes you see a star quarterback and you see a star receiver, and they cannot mesh. And that's what this looks like. And when you begin to look at what's going on at Houston, it was a very, very dangerous team in that division. Nico Collins, who we talked about tonight, had a game where he did like 156 yards, 146 yards. The next week, Dell came back, did the same thing with a touchdown. Hopkins was not anywhere near getting a 150-yard game, especially with this matchup that they have this weekend. This is one of the easiest questions. It's Dell all day long. And there's going to be a time in the near future that people are going to be scrambling to get more of these Texans on their roster, perhaps including the tight end. So I think that's an easy one, and I congratulate the guys that were with foresight, took as many Texans as they could, especially including Tank Dell in the draft at Planet Hollywood.
Yeah, it's smart. I wish I had more shares of Dell. I think it continues, and yeah, I mean, I always say like I'm a weak man, but I think I am strong enough to start Dell over Hopkins this week. So hopefully that helps you out, Glenn, in Greenville, South Carolina. That will complete our show tonight. Ferrell, so much fun with you tonight. So much fun with Jeff Hallas as well. Appreciate you hopping aboard and co-hosting once again. It's the highlight of my Friday nights, man. I will do this again with you next week at 10 o'clock Eastern. Be good and enjoy week 4.
See you, buddy.
Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Want to thank Ferrell. Want to thank Jeff Hallas, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. We will be back next Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern time. In case you missed it, Tuesday's High Stakes, RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown went live, and you could still watch that on the FFPC social channels. We had Week 2 Fantasy Pros Championship second place team owner Chris Kennison on. Show is going to be back this coming Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time with longtime FFPC players and league champs Chris Hart and Toby Bielkini. Those guys will be my guests on Tuesday night. In case you missed it, last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show with my fantastic, sarcastic David Montgomery call that was this close to being right. It was on the Better Sports Network. You can rewatch it at bettersports.com or any of the Better Sports or FFPC socials. Fantasy Mojo's Darren Armani was my guest for the full 2 hours. A lot of good stuff in there for Week 4. This coming Thursday at 7 o'clock, I'll be live again on bettersports.com, all the FFPC and Better Sports channels with the Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast co-host and WGR 550 Sports Talk radio host in Buffalo, New York, Mike Shope is going to join me as my co-host that evening as well. Remember to go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com, myffpc.com to play in the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft or salary cap. Pick your 10 players or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. Before Sunday's kickoff, watch them ride throughout the weekend's games, and you could cash as much as $2,500. Only one player per team. You can play in a 10-team, 30-team, or 100-team format. $35 to enter, $200 to enter. We have the contest size for you. We have the contest budget for you. That's at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on it, share it with your friends and enemies, and get notified every time we go live. Special programming reminder, 9:30. Well, not a programming reminder, but get your lineups in Saturday night or early Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. kickoff between the Falcons and Jaguars from jolly old London town. So make sure you're getting your lineups in early. That is going to do it, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One other thing I did forget to mention with that 9:30 a.m. kickoff, the waivers get processed Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. There is not an early waiver process. So if you have a Falcon or a Jaguar that you are going to pick up and you plan on starting them, you will not be able to pick up and start them this week. You'll be able to pick them up, but you wouldn't be able to start them until Week 5. So make sure when you do get your waivers set for that Sunday morning run that you have all your starting lineup all set, your contingency set, or if you do need to pick up somebody, they are not to potentially play in Week 4. They are not Falcons or Jaguars. Just a friendly neighborhood reminder from your friendly neighborhood Balkman. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll talk with you on Tuesday night on the RotoViz High Stakes Load.